Well, hello. And first, let me apologize because yesterday I was goofing off. Should have made this video then, but today's a holiday, so we'll just pretend it was yesterday. All right, look. So today I was going to go over something that I was asked in my earlier sessions this week because I was talking to somebody about trauma processing. And the question is why do I need to process trauma? What does that mean? Why is it important to do it, and what can it do for me? So for me to explain that, I kind of have to push you back with a few explanations of how, at least how I see the brain works from what I've gathered together from the information, what I've been taught in different type of trauma trainings. Your memory is such that there's a whole lot of things being stored in your memory over time. And your memory has, much like a computer memory, it's easy for some people to understand this is a computer has a short-term memory and a long-term memory. And the human brain has pretty much the same thing. It has a place where stuff goes into that you just recently learned, saw, was told, and then it shifts into long-term memory. Now, the long-term memory is like your big storage files. So for computer people, that's like the difference between your little temporary RAM storage and the big hard drive. I like to see it my old-fashioned way is there's a little room in the back of my head. Short-term memory is this little desk in the front of the office. It's where I throw all the stuff in that comes in every day, a little in basket. And I have a little old lady that's probably about as, wide as a refrigerator, short and squat. She reminds me of my grandma, so it makes me very endeared to the memory. She runs around in her red tennis shoes and she grabs stuff off of my front desk and she files it away in these big cabinets in the back. And I got like walls and walls of cabinets. She puts these away for me. And you go, well, what's the importance of all that? Some things, when you learn them, you don't really learn them till they go into long-term memory. So I have to give you an example of that. And I like to use changing a tire. It's kind of universal. And if you're young enough that you don't have to change a tire, if you're fortunate enough you pay other people to change your tire, it still is nice to know the whole procedure in a nutshell in case you ever had to do it. So if you have a flat tire and you've never changed one, someone's telling you how to do it. So they tell you, all right, first thing you do is put your car's emergency brake on because you don't want the car rolling away while you're trying to change the tire. Then they'll tell you, if you really want to make sure you're safe, you chock the wheel on both sides that you're not jacking up. In other words, if it's the front tire that you're working on, you do the back tire, front tire. But one of them is both sides, front and back. That keeps your car from rolling away. Good thing to know. Then as you pull your tools out, you get your jack under there. Once you've secured your jack and got it up just enough so it's touching the car, locked in, whatever type of jack you have, you loosen each of the lug nuts on the tire and you do them opposite each other so you keep it balanced. But you only loosen them enough to get them started. Why do you do that? If you jack your car all the way up in the air and forget to do that, and you go to take them suckers off, they're so tight, your tire goes round and round, and you're doing this, and you're getting aggravated, and you have to lift the whole thing down so you can do it. Got that. Now, once then you get the tire up in the air, you take off all the lug nuts, ease the tire off, put your new tire on, put your lug nuts on, kind of hand tighten them, and you hand tighten them in a star pattern back and forth like this. So the tire goes on evenly and not crooked. And then you tighten them as much as you can, but not clamp down tight with the bar yet. Then just a little tightening. Then you ease the car down until that tire touches the ground. Now the tire won't spin. Tighten them suckers up all the way. Let the thing all the way down. Put away all your tools. Take your chocks out. Get in your car. Zoom, and away you go. And you go, okay, that's great. Those things go into long-term memory because they're your file that you pull out. So later on, when you're doing what you normally do, you pull your file out. So anytime you're going along, you have a flat tire, a little old lady runs to the back, pulls the file out and says, here's your procedure. Same thing for baking a cake. Same thing for cleaning a house. You have lots of procedures. You have things, your mind does these things, and your work, whatever you do, you have tons of this stuff getting processed away. Put that aside for a second. To understand how memory now works over time, I have an easy example of this. Let's pretend every year when you're growing up, Uncle Bob comes. Uncle Bob gets there and says, hey, we're all going fishing. Every year he takes everybody fishing. Y'all get in a little camper trailer with the boat on the back. You go down to the lake, you do your thing or whatever. It's a beautiful memory of Uncle Bob, 10 years of taking y'all fishing. You're just lovely, you know. If I ask you, what does Uncle Bob look like? You're probably going to give me one description of Uncle Bob. Uncle Bob will, you know, like, oh, well, Uncle Bob's got a beard, and he's bald, and he's tall, and, you know, and these things, you know, and he wears glasses. If I really ask you to think about Uncle Bob over time, you would go, and you'd have to stop and go, well, I think one year he had a Fu Manchu. He didn't have a full beard. And, you know, and he wore those glasses later on because he didn't have to wear glasses when he first started to come. Your memory softens the edges of itself when it gets processed so that later on, for easy recall, you have one simple memory to pull. You don't remember all these things through time unless there's significant identifiers and emotional events that make you remember when that happened. Otherwise, you mostly have a picture. You go, now, why are all these things important? They're important because when something traumatic happens, the thing is unlike other memories, it may stay very solid in short-term memory. And before it's processed, there's a lot that goes with it. It may be some scary stuff. It may be some stuff that's really painful to think about. It may be all these other parts of the memory that are locked in and intensely locked in because of the emotion surrounding that event. And until you process them away, you don't really get to use them quite the same way. And what do I mean by that? A lot of times, like with Uncle Bob, for ease of movement, it's your memory. You've shifted it, can move it into your mind, and you see one picture of Bob. You don't need to see 10 different pictures of Bob, analyzing each one, going through. You just need a quick one to call him and say, yeah, that's my Uncle Bob over there. Trauma memories, once processed and the edges get away, some of the harder parts of the memory may not be as painful. They may not be as scary. They may not be as sad or frightening or whatever it is that's the intense emotion. So by processing them, by taking them and putting them into your long-term file cabinets, you soften the edges and then you allow yourself to pull them up. And people go, why do I need to do that? Again, another example. If you're a young driver, you're taught to drive and you're told, well, now, if you ever get caught in the snow and you find yourself sliding or hydroplaning on water, you don't turn your wheels away to where you want to go. You turn your wheels to face the direction you're moving. You don't apply your brakes. You let off of them until the wheels start to catch. And once the wheels start catching and getting traction, then you can either start to steer a little bit or start to slow down a little bit. Why is this important? Well, if you find yourself sliding into the snow and you panic and you turn to the right, trying to get away from where you don't want to go, your car, then the wheel sideways, it's just going to keep sliding. It won't gain traction. So in order to get the traction, you have to do this. And that's a lot to learn and do. And you usually have to practice it. It happens to you once or twice and you do it. The thing is then if you do that, it becomes a long-term memory you can pull out. So the next time you start to slide, instead of panicking like you did the first time, you, oh, no, turn my wheels. All right, I got this. I can get control again. How does that apply to a trauma memory besides a car? There's lessons to be learned in a lot of things that happen to us. If you're a vet, if you're somebody like it's police enforcement, things like that, knowing these things and being able to react to them means that you've experienced them, then put them away in your head And now you pull those files out and you quickly react to situations. It also means that you can take those experiences and apply them to other things. You can actually then, empathize with other people going through this. There's a lot of things that happen after you process a memory. So that's the importance of processing that memory, is getting it from that front table and having the little lady take it back to the back. And you can have anybody you want processing your memories. I'm just telling you who I like. So the little old lady, she takes it, she puts it in the file cabinet for me. She looks out for me. And you say, well, what happens when they don't get processed? In terms of my little old lady, every night when you go to bed, you're supposed to be dreaming. Part of your dreaming process is the REM process, rapid eye movement. When you go through stages of sleep, you will start to do rapid eye movement and you'll be dreaming. And your dreams are your brain's way of resetting the system and filing away those things you need for later on. So things that happen to you during the day, that changing of the tire, that baking of the cake, that new procedure you learned at work, all those things are going from one part of your brain's memory logs to another part. And in the case of the little old lady, she's filing them away. Well, if something very tragic hits and she pulls that sucker up, yeah, she might not file it. She screams, she throws it down. She won't look at it. She won't handle it right now. She can't process it, and it stays stuck in your short-term memory. You're having a dream. Instead of processing it, you start to have a nightmare. You wake up, your brain shuts down. It refuses to handle this. It refuses to process and take care of this memory. So it stays in your short-term memory. Now, here there's a significant difference between what a computer would do and what a human does. Because in a computer, if your short-term memory shuts down, wipes it out. Humans don't do that. In fact, the emotional reference on this particular memory may be so strong that it locks in everything about that memory. And because it's in short-term, you haven't softened the edges. So that full memory will stay as it is with everything possible. It may be scrambled slightly in its time sequences, but overall, you may remember smells, sounds, feelings, all kinds of things that we don't normally associate with a memory. If I ask you what you did yesterday, you might say, oh, yeah, I got to the car and I went to Wally World and I bought some groceries and, a new toy for the kids. But if that was an intense traumatic memory, you'd be like, yes, I was in the car and the seat was hot and the sun was beaming in and I was sweating and the car smelled like stale Cheetos. And, just think of all the things your memory packs in that you usually discard, again, for ease of recall. You don't remember all this. So go back to Uncle Bob. You don't remember every subtle change Uncle Bob made through time. Okay. And for changing the tire, it doesn't become, yeah, I was really scared and the bar was really cold and it's really tight, really upset me. And I was worried traffic was whizzing by. No, you take out all the edges and just go, oh, yeah, this is what you do to change the tire. In fact, the processing of these memories, especially these traumatic memories, is important because it allows you to take it from something that happened to you maybe to something that's your story that you now control and you can use. And now it's actually a tool in your toolbox of memories to pull out and use if you so choose. So that's why it's important to process that memory. And that's why sometimes they get stuck and don't get processed. Hope that explains a little bit about, it's a very simplified version, but to me, it's very understandable, especially if you've had to change a tire, bake a cake, do any of those things. And please, Bob, forgive me if you're out there in the world, you keep getting used in my stories, but this allows us to understand in this very simple way, mostly what's going on in a very complex procedure, break it down to something simple so that we understand why it's important to process a memory and also what it does and what we can use it for once that's done. And this goes very well with clinicians who use EMDR, eye movement desensitization and reprocessing, It's also the processing memories can go into these other types of narrative therapy, processing type therapies. There's the trauma focused CBT. There's a lot of different therapies. The idea, though, is processing those traumatic events lets you own your memories. You write the story. You're in charge. Hope you have a great day. I hope that explains to some of the people. I promised I'd make this video, so I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you have a good day. And if you have any questions or follow-up you'd like, please let me know. All right? Happy day.